This is the voice of freedom. The Worldwide Freedom Radio Network is on the air.
You're listening to The Art of the Time. I'm Pooh.
You were going to say good evening. You're on the air, weren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Lots of there. And I'm William Cooper.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The right of the citizen to keep and bear arms has roots very deep in history. The American Revolution was sparked at Lexington in Concord and in Virginia by British attempts to disarm the individual and hence the militia. Thomas Jefferson once wrote that the authority of the Declaration of Independence rested on the harmonizing sentiments of the day, whether expressed in conversation, in letters, printed essays, or in the elementary books of public right, as Aristotle, Cicero, Locke, Sidney, etc. These sentiments, which attacked standing mercenary armies and vindicated the use of armed force to oppose tyranny, were also reflected in the Bill of Rights, and indeed provide a jurisprudential commentary thereon. Aristotle, Cicero, John Locke, and Algernon Sidney provided the philosophical justification of the armed sovereignty of the populace. On the other hand, Plato, Jean Bodin, Thomas Hobbes, and Sir Robert Filmer set forth the classical argument in favor of monarchical absolutism. Also among the so-called elementary books of public right, referred to by Jefferson, were the works of Niccolo Machiavelli and James Harrington, whose analysis of the Roman Republic and strategy of popular freedom clearly influenced the Whigs of 1688 and 1776, and of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the intellectual harbinger of the French Revolution. Montesquieu, Bessaria, Berg, and Adam Smith were influential in the areas of legal theory, criminology, and, of course, political economy. While relying to a great extent on Cicero, who was dubbed the greatest orator, statesman, and philosopher of Rome, in the words of John Adams, the founders of this nation based their thinking on the role of the Roman militia in great measure on Machiavelli. Machiavelli's influence was clear in George Mason's speech to the Fairfax Independent Militia Company, which was composed of volunteers who supplied their own arms and elected their own officers. When, according to Mason, the essential maxims of the Roman Commonwealth were undermined, their army no longer considered themselves the soldiers of the Republic, but as the troops of Marius, or Sylla, of Pompey, or of Caesar, of Mark Antony, or of Octavius. John Adams praised Machiavelli for his constitutional model for Florence, which included a popular militia, wherein the sovereign power is lodged both of right and in fact in the citizens themselves, as he put it. Considering such influences, it is no wonder that the second article in amendment affirms the relation between a popular militia and popular freedom in language directly descended from that of Machiavelli. Now, dear listeners, for constitutional principles of government, the founders of this republic, our republic, relied most on the 17th century English republicans, who themselves had been deeply influenced by Aristotle, Cicero, and Machiavelli. Jefferson saw to it that Locke and Sidney would be required reading at the University of Virginia for, as he said, as to the general principles of liberty and the rights of man in nature and in society, the doctrines of Locke in his essay concerning the true original extent and end of civil government, and of Sidney in his discourses on government, may be considered as those generally approved by your fellow citizens of this and the United States. Relying on Locke to deny any governmental right to be absolutely arbitrary, Samuel Adams related, quote, Mr. Locke has often been quoted in the present dispute between Britain and her colonies, and very much to our purpose, end quote. Like the Declaration of Independence, the Virginia Declaration of Rights of 1776, written by George Mason, contains specific phrases from Locke as well as from Cato's letters. The same philosophers appeared in the last will and testament of Josiah Quincy, Jr., who left, quote, To my son, when he shall arrive to the age of 15 years, Algernon Sidney's works, John Locke's works, and Cato's letters, may the spirit of liberty rest upon him, end quote. There are no fathers who leave such admonitions in their wills, nor such bequeathments to their sons today. But to sum it up, the two categorical imperatives of the Second Amendment, that a militia of the body of the people is necessary to guarantee a free state, and that all of the people, all of the time, not just when called for organized militia duty, have a right to keep arms, derive from the classical philosophical texts concerning the experiences of ancient Greece and Rome and 17th century England. Aristotle, Cicero, Machiavelli, and the English Whigs provided an armed populace with the philosophical vindication to counter oppression, which found expression in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. In this sense, the people's right to have their own arms was based on the philosophical and political writings of the greatest intellectuals of the past 2,000 years. William Jefferson Clinton doesn't hold a candle to such men. An appreciation of the significance of these elementary books of public right is indispensable to a correct understanding of the meaning of the Bill of Rights in general and of the Second Amendment in particular. And furthermore, an understanding of the authoritarian absolutism of Plato, Bowden, Hobbes, and Filmer is as necessary as an understanding of classical libertarian republicanism in order to know what America's founders rejected as well as what they accepted. Those who drafted and supported the Bill of Rights followed the libertarian tradition of Aristotle, Cicero, and Sidney, and they rejected soundly the authoritarian, if not totalitarian, tradition of Plato, Caesar, and Filmer. These two basic traditions in political philosophy have consistently enunciated opposing approaches to the question of people and arms, with the authoritarians rejecting the idea of an armed populace in favor of a helpless and obedient populace, and the libertarian republicans accepting the armed populace and limiting the government by the consent of that armed populace. Speaking as Socrates in the Republic, Plato provided a comprehensive analysis of the social and political consequences of individual ownership of arms versus a state monopoly of arms. To refute the definition of justice as fulfilling promises and paying debts, Socrates suggested, in a counterexample, that one ought not to return a deposit of arms or of anything else to one who asks for it when he is not in his right senses, and yet a deposit cannot be denied to be a debt. Since the return should not be made to one, quote, not in his right mind, end quote, repayment of a debt was not necessarily justice because, as he put it, and I quote, a friend ought always to do good to a friend and never evil, end quote. By implication, individual possession of weapons by sane individuals was ethically acceptable to Socrates. Yet Socrates' own definition of justice as the fulfillment of one's proper function, at least as propounded by the more conservative Plato, rejected as degenerate the egalitarian democracy that an armed populace would predictably instate. An essential element of Plato's explanation of political transformation in the Republic related to the tendencies of the unjust state to win privilege through armed force, and of the armed multitude to abolish the unjust state in question. According to Plato, oligarchy arises when privilege based on wealth is fixed by statute. As he put it, quote, this measure is carried through by armed force unless they have already set up their constitution by terrorism, end quote. The abuse resulting from the state monopoly of violence leads to a disunited state wherein the rich and poor continuously plot against each other. If a war with outside forces arises, the oligarchs are faced with the following dilemma. Either they must call out the common people or not. If they do, they will have more to fear from the armed multitude than from the enemy. And if they do not, in the day of battle, these oligarchs will find themselves only too literally a government of the few. The development of an oligarchy into a democracy requires that the common people be armed. Former members of the ruling class who lose their wealth and power long for a revolution. These drones are armed and can sting. Finally, whether by force of arms or because the other party is terrorized into giving way, the poor majority overcomes and establishes a democracy which grants the people an equal share in civil rights and government. Liberty and free speech are rife everywhere. Anyone is allowed to do what he likes. Plato did not like such a possibility. While Plato attacks democracy for exhibiting characteristics which today would be considered laudable, some of his remarks are nevertheless directed against a social order that retains political inequality and therefore cannot be considered a complete democracy. And that's why he called his writing the Republic. Thus, after the old oligarchy is replaced by society progressing towards democracy, a strong leader arises who, quote, begins stirring up one war after another in order that the people may feel their need of a leader, and also be so impoverished by taxation that they will be forced to think of nothing but winning their daily bread instead of plotting against him, end quote. Sound familiar? Finally, the despot wins complete victory by reestablishing the state monopoly of arms. And as mentioned earlier, it is usually accomplished through terrorism, political terrorism. And he says, quote, "Then, to be sure, the people will learn what sort of a creature it has bred and nursed to greatness in its bosom. Until now, the child is too strong for the parent to drive out. Do you mean that the despot will dare to lay hands on this father of his and beat him if he resists? Yes, when once he has disarmed him," end quote. While Plato portrays tyranny as the ultimate degeneration of the state, his ideal state, the reign of the philosopher king, where have you heard that before, actually resembles tyranny. Both despotism and the ideal monarchy involve rule by one person, with the only difference being the alleged good intentions of the ideal monarch. A dubious check on despotism. Plato himself suggested that a young, educated despot may become the philosopher king. After attacking the democratic ideal, where one man is traitor, legislator, and warrior all in one, Plato devised a normative social structure with the ruling philosophers at the top, the soldier auxiliaries in the middle, and the working masses at the very bottom. This pyramid sets the royal elite over the professional warriors and requires the inferior multitude to, quote, mind their own business, end quote. The stage is thereby set for a tyranny, having monopolized the means of force to exploit the majority. Plato's practical proposals for totalitarianism are set forth in the Laws, which anticipates a state of just over 5,000 citizens plus numerous slaves, while at one point designating warriors as a specialized class. Plato elsewhere anticipates that the director of children and other instructors will discipline all girls, boys, women, and men with compulsory military exercises. You see, nothing under the sun has ever changed. In discussing the Pyrrhic war dance, pancration, which was fighting with hands and feet, and armed contests, Plato would mandate that the techniques of fighting are skills which all citizens, male and female, must take care to acquire. While the possession by the citizens of martial skills would suggest a mode for some form of popular control, the overwhelming power of the guardians of the laws would provide for state domination over every aspect of life. Unlike Aristotle, Plato nowhere hints that the citizens would have their own arms. Instead, arms seem to be placed in the citizens' hands only for the temporary purpose of military exercise once per month. So while failing to foresee that martial arts learned by the citizens may contribute to the protection of popular liberty, the Laws insist that freedom from control must be uncompromisingly eliminated from the life of all men. Quote, By following the militarist examples of Sparta and Crete rather than the freer civilizations of Athens, Plato hopes that no one, man or woman, must ever be left without someone in charge of him. Nobody must get into the habit of acting above and independently, either in sham fighting or the real thing. And in peace and war alike, we must give our constant attention and obedience to our leader." End quote. So rather than use their arms to protect their interests against the despotism, the people may use their arms solely at the state's command. Everyone is to have the same friends and enemies as the state. In some, in the laws, as in the Republic, Plato advocates an authoritarian state wherein arms and people function solely as grist for the ruling elite. In the Politics, Aristotle critically analyzes the elitist authoritarian regime advocated by Plato. As opposed to the strict division between rulers, warriors, and workers in the Socratic dialogue, Aristotle's concept of polity included a large middle class, in which each citizen fulfilled all three functions of self-legislation, arms-bearing, and working. According to Aristotle, who is known as the father of reason, quote, "There are many things which Socrates left undetermined. Are farmers and craftsmen to have no share in government? Are they or are they not to possess arms?" End quote. And in accord with his broad philosophical ideal of the golden mean, Aristotle expresses a very keen awareness of the true basis of political equality. Quote, "The whole constitutional setup is intended to be neither democracy nor oligarchy, but midway between the two, what is sometimes called polity, the members of which are those who bear arms." End quote. The members of which are those who bear arms. Aristotle proceeded to attack again the constitution of Plato's laws because, despite its suffrage, it was oligarchical, and one of its salient features was a disarmed populace. Aristotle found the monopolization of arms bearing in the hands of one class to be an objectionable feature of the best state advocated by Hippodamus. Quote, "Hippodamus planned a city with a population of 10,000 divided into three parts, one of skilled workers, one of agriculturalists, and a third to bear arms and secure defense." End quote. The legal restriction of arms bearing to a given class entrusted with defense would lead to oppression by that class. And he said, quote, "The farmers have no arms. The workers have neither land nor arms. This makes them virtually the servants of those who do possess arms. In these circumstances, the equal sharing of offices and honors become an impossibility." End quote. The possession of arms, according to Aristotle, is a requisite for true citizenship and participation in the polity. But since those who possess arms must be superior in power to both the other sections, the constitution proposed by Hippodamus would breed inequality and discontent. In analyzing the elusive concept of the constitutional kingship, Aristotle commented on its opposite, tyranny, which was founded on a professional standing army. Thus, a king's bodyguard is composed of citizens carrying arms, a tyrant's of foreign mercenaries, an all-volunteer force, paid and promised a handsome retirement. The citizens protect the king, but they need protection from the tyrant. Even the armed force of the monarch must not be strong enough to overpower the whole population. Aristotle was a very smart man. Since all true citizens possess arms, the arms bearers are not limited to those who defend the state in war. Just after referring to, quote, the class which will defend in time of war, end quote, Aristotle declares that, quote, it is quite normal for the same persons to be found bearing arms and tilling the soil, end quote. By contrast, quote, oligarchical devices, end quote, exist in regulations made about carrying arms to the effect that it is lawful for the poor not to possess arms. The rich are fined if they do not have them. Since arms were essential to the polity for full participation in principal citizenship, ought to be reserved for those who can afford to carry arms, yet Aristotle immediately went on to recognize the ill treatment of the poor that would result from such a property qualification. You see, the poor do not have the requisite wealth in order to always be able to afford to bear arms. In a polity, each citizen is to possess his own arms which are not supplied or owned by the state. As Plato had perceived in the Republic, Aristotle also saw that a prerequisite to the transition from an oligarchy to a popular constitution is the arming of the people, who would overpower the oligarch's troops. Furthermore, tyranny derives from the oligarchy's mistrust of the people. Hence, they deprive them of arms, ill-treat the lower class, and keep them from residing in the capital. And these are common to oligarchy and tyranny. War, taxation, and public works keep the people poor and preoccupied, perpetuating the power of the tyrant. It is also in the interest of a tyrant to keep his subjects poor, so that they may not be able to afford the cost of protecting themselves by arms, and be so occupied with their daily tasks that they have no time for rebellion. While recognizing the political implications of material factors, including territory and military technology, Aristotle contended that conditions promoting the use of cavalry and hoplites would result in an oligarchy because of the high costs of horses and heavy armor. But the light armed infantry and service in ships are democratic, and so in practice, wherever these form a large proportion of the population, the oligarchs, if there is a struggle, fight at a disadvantage. The possession of light arms by the people allows them to overcome oligarchy. Quote, it is by the use of light infantry in civil wars that the masses get the better of the rich. Their mobility and light equipment give them an advantage over cavalry and the heavy armed, end quote. The hour of the time is brought to you, ladies and gentlemen, by Swiss America Trading. Swiss America Trading has long dedicated itself, through the leadership of Craig Smith, to providing a distinct and extremely valuable service to those who understand that something is terribly wrong and that this country is on the brink of total and complete disaster. How could anything more be more total than complete or more complete than total. Everything eventually has to come crashing down because it's built upon nothing. It is the house of cards. Magic, if you will. Magic, as you may well know from listening to past episodes of the Hour of the Time, is the art of illusion. The Magi practice magic. The Magi are the adept of the Illuminati, the highly degreed sons of light, the priests of the hidden mystery religion of ancient Babylon, Rome, Assyria, etc. They are in control today, and many of you have been looking for many years to find the enemy that is destroying this country, because what is happening here makes no sense. It must be being brought about from something from without. Isn't that the way the thought usually arises? But you should by now be discovering that you are wrong. All that is happening is coming from within. It is a concerted effort to build a new order, a new world order, if you will, upon the ashes of the old. And the only thing really standing in their way at this point is the fact that American citizens still keep and bear arms and adamantly refuse to surrender them. There is only one avenue left for those who would bring about their new totalitarian socialist order, and that is to create a state of utter chaos, so that most people, unsuspecting in their naivete and in their ignorance, will get upon their knees and beg for order. Ordo ab chao. Out of chaos comes order. They will accept whatever order is instituted if that will return security, false though it may be, to their lives. Only those who are thoroughly prepared will be able to fight the coming battle, persevere, and prevail. And one of the methods of being prepared and persevering and prevailing is to go back to constitutional money, real money, lawful money, the only money that throughout the history of the world has never, ever failed. The only way to protect the sweat of your brow, the assets that you have labored so long and so hard to acquire, is through the use, through the acquisition, and through the preservation and storage of real money. Swiss America Trading can provide that for you. 1-800-289-2646. 1-800-BUY-COIN. Do it now, folks. You'll be so glad that you did. A great weight will come off of your shoulders. Look around at your loved ones. If you cannot, right now, absolutely assure them that you have taken care of any possibility of an economic collapse, and you have taken the necessary steps to protect what you have, then you must make this call. If you have not taken those steps, you must make this call. 1-800-BUY-COIN. If you do not make this call, then truly, you do not love them. Ladies and gentlemen, every city requires food, tools, and arms, and of course many other things, but these are essential. Arms are included because members of the Constitution must carry them even among themselves, both for internal government in the event of civil disobedience and to repel external aggression. In polity and democracy, in contrast with oligarchy and tyranny, the members of the Constitution are many, and all have arms. Whether they comprise the few or the many, those with arms are sovereign. And I quote Aristotle, "For those who possess and can wield arms are in a position to decide whether the Constitution is to continue or not," end quote. Pretty heavy, isn't it? But if you read the Declaration of Independence, you'll see that our founding fathers said exactly the same thing. And that's the way that they intended it. So that if government became oppressive or became a tyrant, the people could dissolve such government and institute a government of their choosing. Because no free man submits to a tyrant, and since rule without consent is neither rightful nor legal, Aristotle deemed arms possession a requisite to obtain or to maintain the status of being a free man and citizen. Without arms, that status was unreachable, and is unreachable, and will always be unreachable. In the Athenian constitution, Aristotle described the manner in which Pisistratus seized power by force and set up a tyranny by disarming the Athenians, sent into exile for establishing a tyranny. Pisistratus hired soldiers and returned. And Aristotle describes it thusly, quote, "Winning the battle of Pelias, he seized the government and disarmed the people. And now he held the tyranny firmly. And he took Naxos and appointed Lysidamas ruler. The way in which he disarmed the people was this. He held an armed muster at the temple of Theseus, and began to hold an assembly. But he lowered his voice a little, and when they said they could not hear him, he told them to come up to the forecourt of the Acropolis, in order that his voice might carry better. And while he used up time making a speech, the men told off for this purpose gathered up the arms, locked them up in the neighboring buildings of the temple of Theseus, and came and informed Pisistratus." End quote. Pisistratus then told the people that henceforth only he would manage public affairs. Pisistratus was tyrant for almost 2 decades, and was succeeded by his sons Hippias and Hipparchus. After Hipparchus was killed in a procession, Hippias resorted to torture and execution. Aristotle says, and I quote, "But the current story that Hippias made the people and the procession fall out away from their arms and searched for those that retained their daggers is not true, for in those days they did not walk in the procession armed. But this custom was instituted later by the democracy." End quote. In short, the Athenians were disarmed under tyranny and armed under democracy. Aristotle also described the similar methods resorted to by the 30 tyrants to perpetuate their power. Under their rule, only 3,000 persons who favored the tyranny qualified for citizenship. Opposition naturally arose from the majority of the people deprived of citizenship. The multitude found an able spokesman, and Theramenses, who the 30 feared would lead the people to destroy the oligarchy. After losing an expedition against armed exiles, the 30 decided to arm the others and to destroy Theramenes, in part by giving themselves absolute powers to execute any citizens not members of the roll of 3,000. Theramenes having been put out of the way, they disarmed everybody except the 3,000, and in the rest of their proceedings went much further in the direction of cruelty and rascality. The 30 eventually met a violent end due to the success of the armed refugees. To add it all up, in the theory and praxis of Athenian politics as expounded by Plato and Aristotle, an armed populace means polity and direct democracy, while a disarmed populace is the essential element of oligarchy and tyranny. Moreover, Aristotle's concept of individual autonomy through personal arms in a polity may be viewed in light of the nature which impels mankind to develop and possess defensive weapons. This natural tendency, according to his account in Parts of Animals, which is the title of a book, stems from the human's anatomy. And I quote, "Now it must be wrong to say, as some do, that the structure of man is not good. In fact, that it is worse than that of any other animal. Their grounds are that man is barefoot, unclothed, and void of any weapon of force. Against this we may say that all the other animals have just one method of defense and cannot change it for another. They are forced to sleep and perform all their actions with their shoes on the whole time. As one might say, they can never take off this defensive equipment of theirs, nor can they change their weapon, whatever it may be. For man, on the other hand, many means of defense are available, and he can change them at any time, and above all, he can choose what weapon he will have and where. Take the hand. This is as good as a talon, or a claw, or a horn, or again a spear, or a sword, or any other weapon or tool. It can be all of these because it can seize and hold them all, and nature has admirably contrived the actual shape of the hand so as to fit in with this arrangement." End quote. Roman philosophy and history embodied significant lessons concerning the social and political characteristics of armed and disarmed populaces. On the one hand, Roman citizenship, particularly during the Republican epoch, included a right to keep and bear arms for individual or collective self-defense. On the other hand, aggression against both barbarians and Roman citizens by Roman tyrants and empire builders was coupled with the policy of disarming and then eliminating their opponents. The use of deception to disarm the populace to be conquered was a technique that early Roman aggressors learned well from Greek tyrants. Talus Hostilius, the third Roman king, entered Alba under false pretenses with the intention of razing the city to its foundations. According to Dionysius of Halicarnassus, he ordered all the Alban troops to come to an assembly after first laying aside their arms. Roman troops, swords concealed under their garments, surrounded the Albans, who were informed by Tullus that the city would be destroyed. Upon this, a tumult arose in the assembly, and some of them, rushing to arms, those who surrounded the multitude, upon a given signal, held up their swords. Opponents were then slain, and the city was razed. The institution of an armed populace, whose members would provide and keep their own arms, was initiated by Servius Tullius, the sixth Roman king. Formerly, the right to bear arms had belonged solely to the patricians. Now plebeians were given a place in the army, which was to be reclassified according to every man's property. In effect, his ability to provide himself a more or less complete equipment for the field. According to Livy, all the citizens capable of bearing arms registered in a census, and these men were required to provide their own swords, spears, and other armor. In De Re Publica, Cicero relates that Servius organized a large group of knights from the main body of the people, and that the rest of the population was divided into centuries, or groups of 100. Thus, even before the overthrow of the monarchy and the establishment of the republic, the right to keep and bear arms belonged to patrician and plebeian alike. Marcus Tullius Cicero, the great philosopher, senator, and lawyer, set forth the most complete discussion in the Roman Republican tradition of the natural right to have and use arms for public defense against tyranny and for private defense against attack. And this is extremely unusual, for in his quest for power, Cicero was always raising the specter of treason from within, of armed revolt against the Republic, of men who would take up arms against the Senate. And in his constant raising of this bugaboo enemy, Cicero stepped up to power. If he could not make the enemy believable or forceful enough, he would set his thugs to beat and rob Roman citizens. And if he needed a rousing political cry, he would raise and burn a government building or a temple. Yet, just as today, just as those in government cry their defense of the constitutional republic and of the right to keep and bear arms, they work behind the scenes to subvert that right, to subvert that republic, and to disarm the people. Cicero set the stage for this, and those who are doing it today learned from Cicero and many others, I might add. But Cicero was a master at propaganda and terrorism, and raising the specter of armed patriots who would destroy the country. Unbelievable that the same man is quoted now, many centuries and millennia later, as being a great defender of the natural right to have and use arms for public defense against tyranny and for private defense against attack. And by contrast, the connection between standing armies, the disarmament of peoples, and foreign and domestic tyranny is well exemplified in the writings of Julius Caesar. Analysis in a chronological context of the orations and philosophical writings of Cicero, and secondarily of Caesar's account of the Gallic and Civil Wars, demonstrates the identification of the armed citizen with the Roman Republic and of the standing army with the empire. Cicero delivered two orations involving arms in the turbulent year 63 BC. First, he defended Gaius Rabirius, who was prosecuted for the murder of Lucius Appuleius Saturninus. Saturninus was an ally of Gaius Marius, who replaced Rome's citizen army with mercenaries, and was an uncle and political teacher of Caesar. Saturninus was killed in 100 BC for attempting a coup d'etat to destroy the Roman constitution. Now, 40 years later, Caesar instigated the prosecution of Rabirius for murder, and Cicero acted as the defense counsel. All of this you should read about in the newest book out, entitled Julius Caesar, and I will attempt to give you the author's name sometime during this broadcast. And you will see the true machinations and what really happened and how Cicero attempted truly to destroy the republic and institute an oligarchy through the use of that old bugaboo. Traitors with weapons are dangerous, and traitors are patriots and militia and armed populace. These are plotting to overthrow the Senate, was his standard line. While he had not killed Saturninus, like many other citizens, Rabirius took up arms with the intention of killing Saturninus, yet neither the attempt nor the fatal act against the would-be tyrant was unlawful. And I quote, "For there is surely no difference between the man who kills and the man who takes up arms for the purpose of killing. If it was a crime to kill Saturninus, then to take up arms against him could not fail to be a crime as well. But if you agree that the taking up of arms was lawful, then you are obliged to agree that the killing was lawful as well." End quote. To counter the forces of Saturninus, the consuls headed by Julius Caesar, said, and I quote, "Ordered every citizen who had the welfare of the state at heart to take up arms and follow their lead. Everyone obeyed. Weapons were taken from the temples and the public arsenals, and Gaius Marius distributed them among the populace." End quote. Interestingly, Saturninus had originally depended on the backing of Gaius Marius and his mercenaries. After Saturninus had seized the capital, every single other Roman citizen who existed proceeded to take up arms in the same cause. Many noteworthy individuals armed themselves to protect our country in its peril, and men of all ranks took up arms to defend the freedom of every one of us. End quote. The prosecution of Rabirius was eventually stopped, but Cicero applied similar principles in another oration during the same year against Lucius Sergius Catilina. Catilina had also sought to abolish the republic. Cicero personally had assembled forces and bodyguards to protect the people and himself from Catilina. For Cicero, having and using arms to protect the republic was honorable. Thus he praises the courage to strike down a dangerous Roman citizen more fiercely even than they struck down the bitterest of foreign foes. But having arms specifically to be used for assassination was criminal. Quote, "You were illegally carrying arms. You had got together a group determined to strike down the leading men of the state." End quote. Cicero, in fact, created the circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, to label his political enemies as terrorists moving to destroy the republic. And this is clear in the history of Rome. There is no mistaking any of it. Cicero was eventually unmasked and driven from power. He went into exile, where he continued his machinations. Eventually, he was brought back to Rome, a more subdued, more docile patriarch, forgiven. But Cicero never ever stopped. Many books today claim Cicero to be a great hero, a great proponent of republicanism, of democracy, of the right of the people to keep and bear arms. It is sad how history can be twisted by historians who have an agenda by doing such things. For it was Cicero himself who created the situation that resulted in the laws against the citizens of Rome bearing arms within the gates of Rome. That is indeed sad. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up to the top of the hour. And while we're at that top of the hour and doing our network break, I'm going to put on some music so that I can get Julius Caesar and give you the information you need to read it. You need to read the book because it describes the situations in ancient Rome that are parallel to situations that exist today. And you can see the machinations of the senators and the powerful families of Rome as they compete for power, and as they attempt to undermine each other, and as they attempt to take the reins of control away from the people, the citizens of Rome, and create an oligarchy, which eventually leads, of course, to a dictatorship in the form of an emperor and an empire. You'll see that Julius Caesar begins as a great man in defense of the rights of the people, of the citizens, and of the Constitution of the Republic. But as throughout history, power corrupts, and it corrupts absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you can see through the history of Julius Caesar and those who surround him that as they gain power, they become more corrupt. And no matter their good intentions, the result is the same. The fostering, the gathering of all power into the hands of a very few and then into the hands of one, ultimately resulting in the fall of the Roman Empire. The complete destruction of Rome was not due to any influence of some ragtag scattered body of a new religion called Christians. On the contrary, it was due to the decadence, the degradation, the descent into tyranny and despotism of those who ruled Rome, and the attempts of the populace and the people who were crushed under the thumb of the empire of the legions of Rome to regain their freedom and exercise it. The collapse of the moral structure, the collapse of the family unit, the collapse of the religions of Rome, all of these things led to the ultimate complete downfall. Christians really had very little, if anything, to do with any of it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth. The title is That Every Man Be Armed, The Evolution of a Constitutional Right by Stephen P. Howbrook from the Independent Institute. Now, when you get this book and read it, when you come to the part that discusses the heroics and the wonderful contributions to humankind of Cicero, make sure that you have read Julius Caesar first so that you will know that this is not really true. That it is people who superficially read the history of the Roman Empire that really believe that Cicero is some kind of a hero protecting the rights of the people, because they're just reading Cicero's own bullshit is what they're doing, and they're swallowing it. Just as if you were to really believe William Clinton's speeches or Hillary Clinton's book, or for that matter, any of these politicians' lie speeches or books. They are a pack of unmitigated, barefaced liars. Pompous asses, if you want to know the truth. And you must be careful about believing what you read that they wrote. However, if you read the histories that others wrote during the time about these people, you will more readily discover the truth. I'm sure that sometime in 1,000 years, someone will dig up the writings and speeches of William Clinton and think that he was a great man who was standing up in defense of liberty and freedom for all people, and that because he was a sportsman, he promoted and was for the right to keep and bear arms, and blah, 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 blah. The rest of this book is accurate, and I highly recommend it to all of you. You need to read it. It goes through the history of the books and writings that set the stage for liberty and freedom and for the right of the people to keep and bear arms. It covers the common law of England. I'm not selling this book, and I'm not going to give you an address where to write from it. I'm just going to tell you to go find it because I pulled this out of my library for tonight's discourse and conversation. Goes into the American Revolution in the second article in amendment and continues into antebellum interpretations right up to the freedmen firearms and the 14th Amendment that resulted from the Great Civil War that was fought for freedom. And now when I say fought for freedom, ladies and gentlemen, don't misunderstand me. The South was fighting for state rights, and in their fight they were certainly fighting for freedom. The North was fighting for the Union to stay together and for that concept of freedom, that in the power of a complete nation that freedom would prevail. And unfortunately, we all lost a little something. The black race, the slaves, won a great victory. And not intentionally, I can assure you, Abraham Lincoln in his own writings and his own speeches make it clear that the war was not fought to free the slaves, nor was his Emancipation Proclamation a product of any political pressure. It was merely an attempt to create a situation where the blacks would rise up against their southern masters and cripple the economy of the South and thus hasten the winning of the war by the North. It is a wonderful thing that it happened, in my estimation and many others, as all men must be free. Goes to state and federal judicial decisions right up through Supreme Court decisions, as close to the present day as it could possibly get. It was printed in 1994. It is a good book. Will give you a better understanding of the right to keep and bear arms and the philosophical and legal foundations upon which it is based. It makes it clear, ladies and gentlemen, the court rulings and the Supreme Court rulings make it clear that the right to keep and bear arms is inviolable. How are they getting away with it? Well, it's very simple, folks. They just do it. No one challenges them. No one knows or understands the law except a few of us. And when we challenge them, we win personal, small victories, not large national victories. If all the people would study the law and study the truth and do their own investigations like they should, and get out of the elitist inspired attitude that they must occupy all of their time to live in some great wealthy station beyond their capabilities of enjoying it because of the amount of slavery and judgery that they have to go through to maintain that status of standard of living, they might live a much more enjoyable life. Simpler life, to be sure, but much more enjoyable also, to be sure. If the population were to awaken, were to learn the law, to draw the line in the sand, to say no, to refuse to give up their arms, to take up the debate wherever the debate is formed, to form militias, to drill in public and to meet in public, to make sure of the legal status of their militia, to understand the purpose of the militia, to understand that militias do not break laws, nor do you allow members of the militia to exist who break the law. All of these things must be done. If they are not done, then there will come a day where Americans will surrender their arms. And the day that they surrender their arms, except for the few of us who have drawn the line, who have elected to die rather than be slaves in some some mistaken, vague, foggy notion of some utopian, totalitarian, socialist order that's going to be the best for all humankind that nobody can even describe to any of us. Except for us. Most will march off into that slavery. And on the day they surrender their arms, Americans will become slaves and America will cease to exist. It is just that simple, ladies and gentlemen. It is not a subject of debate. It's an absolute fact. History repeats itself over and over and over again. Nothing. There is nothing new under the sun today at all. Period. All things have been before and all things will come around again. It is the same old march that is always performed, and it will be the same old march 1,000 years from now that is performing today. There are cycles and stages and seasons that just repeat. Why do you enjoy the springtime when it comes? Because you have forgotten how wonderful it is through the winter and the fall, and it's as if it were new again and you had never seen it before in your life. It is marvelous. The rains and the winds and the sunshine and the new life and the flowers and the greenness and the leaves of the trees. The warmth. And then the fall comes with its magic. And it is magic, the crisp snap in the air. That's invigorating, as a matter of fact. And the trees, the leaves begin to turn into the most beautiful symphony of colors that you can imagine. And then slowly drop from their branches, and before you know it, there's a barren, bleak landscape, overcast, bitter cold, and snows. And of course, this does not take place everywhere in the world, but I can tell you from my own experience, ladies and gentlemen, for I lived in Hawaii for 8 years, and there are no seasons in Hawaii. None whatsoever. It's just one long, beautiful, great, wonderful, fantastic, incredible summer. And after a while, it is the most absolutely boring experience that you can imagine. After 8 years, I had to flee the islands. I could not stand it any longer. If I smelled another flower, if I saw another lush green hillside covered with the most beautiful rainbow, I was just going to vomit. You see, we need that change, or at least I do. I believe that most people need that kind of change. Without it, our lives become, well, the same. There were other things about the islands that contributed to that feeling, ladies and gentlemen. You see, they're very small. You may think they're big when you're there, but after you've driven around the island 500 times and you've seen everything absolutely that there is to see, you begin to feel as if you're in a tiny closet and you just can't get out. I love to go back. It's a wonderful place for a vacation. It's a wonderful place if you were rich enough to be able to go there for 3 or 4 months out of the year and then go somewhere else for a while. Just traveling seems to take the place of the seasons and gives you that needed variety in your life. But you see, it's not just seasons of weather that exist in men's lives. It is seasons and cycles of politics and freedom and oligarchy and tyranny and revolution. And then it starts all over again. It has been that battle since the beginning of time, what I call the battle of good versus evil. those who would enslave and those who will not be enslaved. And I am one of the latter. The right to keep and bear arms is a right that should be engraved upon the hearts and minds of all Americans. The second article in the amendment is clear, ladies and gentlemen. A militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The first clause is descriptive. A militia being necessary to the security of a free state is making a statement that a state cannot be free. A state, in the terms of our founding fathers, was the people. Not a government, but the people. In order for the people to be free, they must have a militia. Who was the militia? All of the people, all of the time, who provided their own arms, their own kit, their own gear, their own sustenance, and were ready to defend the freedom of all at a moment's notice. Who could call up the militia? Any responsible citizen could call up the militia, as did Paul Revere during his famous ride. The second clause is the active clause, and is the entire reason for the entire phrase, for the entire sentence, for the entire second article in amendment. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What is so difficult to understand about that? What kind of arms? Any kind of arms that are necessary to maintain the freedom and security of the people against any insurrection, against any invasion, and against anyone who would subvert or destroy the laws of the Union or of the state. Anyone who would create an oppressive, tyrannical government over the people. Anyone who would attempt to disarm the people. The Constitution for the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, recognizes the militia as a pre-existing body before the Constitution was written or adopted. You see, the Constitution does not provide for the Congress to form a militia or to create a militia. It provides for the Congress to call forth the militia, and by that statement recognizes the supremacy of the militia over the Constitution as a pre-existing force of the people and of the several colonies to protect their freedom against anyone who would take it away. The Declaration of Independence set the stage by saying any government that would become despotic or become a tyrant should be overthrown by the people, disbanded by the people, negated by the people. It all means the same thing. And that they should form a government more to their liking, one which would serve their interests and preserve their freedoms. Every American should read the Declaration of Independence and understand every word of it. If possible, you should memorize it. The same for the Constitution for the United States of America and the Bill of Rights. In fact, you must also have a very, very good understanding of the Articles of Confederation, which, by the way, were never negated, were never repealed, and are still a great part of the first documents in law of this great nation. The militia has been recognized since the beginning, the foundation of the very first body politics in this country, by those who came to escape the tyranny of the old world as the means of defense against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that is still recognized today as the oath of all of those who are inducted into the armed forces, enlisted as well as officers. Requires that their allegiance be placed in defense of the Constitution for the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that they will obey all lawful orders of the officers placed above them. The Uniform Code of Military Justice also stresses that no one should ever follow unlawful or unconstitutional orders. The precedent for this, ladies and gentlemen, was set clearly at Nuremberg during the Nuremberg trials, where it was stated that following orders was not an excuse, and that the proper thing to do would have been to disobey those orders if they were unlawful or if they were wrong, even if it meant the death of the soldier who disobeyed. Nothing has changed. Nothing is going to change. Nothing will change. We may be few, but we are an army. We are an army that understands our history. We understand freedom. We understand the risks and responsibilities entailed in living in a state of freedom. And we are fully and completely willing to pay whatever price is necessary in order to maintain freedom with responsibility in a constitutional republican government, recognizing the rights of each individual that our Creator endowed and are protected by the document known as the Constitution for the United States of America and the first 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights. I find it incredible that many Americans, many more than you would even dare to believe, have never even read the Constitution for the United States of America or the Bill of Rights in their entire life and know nothing about it. They know literally nothing about the principles and ideals upon which this nation was founded, that gave this nation and its people the greatness and the prosperity, the standard of living and the opportunity that we have enjoyed for over 200 years. Now, in their ignorance and their apathy, and yes, even their stupidity, they are taking steps which they believe to be right based upon the erroneous lessons that they have been taught by their socialist masters to destroy all of it and create another nation in the image of what they believe has fallen the Soviet Union. If you read Mikhail Gorbachev's book, Perestroika, if you read his speeches, if you read the writings of other prominent socialist politicians and great men, great to communism and socialism, you will find that the fall of the Soviet Union was a deception, meant to lull the West to sleep, so that there could be, ladies and gentlemen, a synthesis of the two, capitalism and communism, into a world body politic, a totalitarian socialist new world order, which they call the Golden Dawn, or the New Dawn, or the Golden Age returning, or the New World Order, or the New Covenant. They have many words for it, but it is all the same. And they are ready and willing to destroy anyone who opposes their new order. You will not be allowed to move into the future, into the new millennium, if you are considered to be heretical, if you will not give up the past, if you are a Klingon. The Federation will crush you if you are a Klingon, and you will be relegated to a small spot in the universe. and a perpetual war will exist against you. Unless, of course, you renounce your fellows and your beliefs and your principles and your ideals and your religion and your creator-endowed rights and join Captain James T. Kirk on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise and voyage where no man has dared to voyage before. James T. Kirk, spelled backwards, the initials is Knights of the Temple of Jerusalem, the Knights Templar, from which all of this sprang again when they brought the old ancient mystery religion of Babylon back from the Crusades and established it in Europe. And they weren't the only ones. But you see, they had a passion of vengeance against the existing religious orders, the existing nation states, and the people who hunted them and condemned them. Their goal is to establish their religion, and only their religion, as the religion of the world, to destroy all existing governments save theirs, their hidden secret government, which they will establish as a world totalitarian socialist, what they call benevolent despotism, where they will present a Messiah to the world behind whom rules, truthfully, a council of what they call wise men. And they fully intend to shackle the mob. That's you. If I were you, I would study up on this. If I were you, I would take advantage of our sale and get your hands on our Mystery Babylon series. Listen to every word of it, every tape, and wake up to the reality of the world. You see, your e-ticket has expired and you're still wandering around in Disneyland. The park is closed, the lights are out, the rides are not moving. Yet in your deranged state of mind, you believe that they are, and you believe that it's the real world, and that's the way it really is. But if you dare to venture over to the fence and peek up over the top, you'll see that there really are hookers on Anaheim Boulevard, and that there are traffic accidents and crime and many other things going on all around you, just over the edge of the fence that represents your ignorance. Don't go away. I'll be right back, and then we'll take your calls. The number is 520-333-4578.
He is camping out for places where the grace of wrath of sword. He has loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible sport. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. I have seen him in the watchfires of 100 searching camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dews and dance. I can read his righteous faces by a dim and fairy glance. His day is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Hour of the Time is brought to you by Swiss America Trading. Swiss America Trading cares about the message of this broadcast. They care sincerely about the success of the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network, the voice of freedom, if you will, the last voice of freedom left in the world, the only source of documented, sourced, real, truthful information. You don't ever have to agree with any of the opinions of anyone that you hear on this network. You don't have to believe or not required to believe anything that we present to you. You are required to think, and you are required to investigate and check everything. We hope that you will listen to everyone, read everything, believe nothing, unless you can prove it in your own research. Seek ye the truth, and the truth will make you free. And that's the only way that freedom can be gained. After it is gained, it must be held. It requires eternal vigilance. It requires that you be armed. It requires that you be willing to die for what you believe in, so that you can hand your children and your grandchildren the freedom that you so rightfully and so wonderfully enjoyed. Swiss America Trading wants all of these things to happen for you. And that's why they solidly back the message of the Hour of the Time and the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network. We hope that if you are going to deal in precious metals of any kind, that you not be deceived, but that you deal with the people who bring you these broadcasts, and that's Swiss America Trading. That you deal with the people who guarantee what they do, that is Swiss America Trading. That you deal with people who give you a buyback policy and nobody else does it, that is Swiss America Trading. That you deal with the people that tell you the truth. That in order for your purchases to be non-confiscatable and non-reportable, you must pay at least a 15% premium above the price of the metal in the coin. And that is the truth. Call them. Thank them for sponsoring the Hour of the Time. Thank them for backing the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network. Ask for the latest current newsletter. Tell them that you're a steady listener to the Hour of the Time, and you'll get red carpet treatment, I guarantee it. If you don't, you call me, and I'll make sure that you do when you call back after I get through with whoever it is that didn't treat you right. 1-800-289... Well, let's just do it the easy way. 1-800-BUY-COIN. 1-800-289-2646 or 1-800-BUY-COIN. Call now. You know how we all are. We tend to put things off. 1-800-289-2646. Ask for Frank. If he's not in, talk to anybody else there. And get your hands, ladies and gentlemen, on some real money. It's important that you do that. 520-333-4578 is the number. Go right to the phones after this brief pause. I want you to call, ladies and gentlemen. I want to know if you would take up arms in defense of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and freedom. I want to know if they came to disarm you, would you give up your weapons? I want to know where you would draw the line in the sand. give up your weapons? If they came to your door and said that they had passed a law that all Americans have to give up all weapons, would you do it? Where would you draw the line in the sand? Would you fight for freedom? Would you fight for your Creator-endowed rights? Would you fight for the Constitution, for the United States of America, and for the Bill of Rights? Would you fight against tyranny? Or would you do what they say and hope that someone else would fight for you? One 800-289-2646 is the number you should call for Swiss America Trading. To get on the air tonight, it's 520-333-4578. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill.
Hello.
So you want to know if anybody out here will fight?
I want to know if you will fight.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to tell me your name or where you're calling from. I just want to know, would you fight? If they came to your door and said that they had passed the law in the middle of the night and they'd come for your weapons, what would you do?
Well, I certainly wouldn't give them my weapons, and I would fight. And I probably spent the last 4 or 5 years of my life hoping that that day will never come, but preparing for it.
Me too. It's been the whole thrust of this broadcast since its beginning. In fact, everything I've done since I've begun this quest, if you will, the quest to wake up the American people and stop the bloodshed that I know is coming if they persist in their insanity, to put us back in serfdom, so to speak.
Yeah. You know, 2 or 3 years ago, I would talk to people about what was going on, and you get the strangest look. And it's a little different nowadays. There really seems to be a groundswell around here of people shaking their heads and just going, what's going on?
Strange things are happening, aren't they?
Yeah.
I've noticed it also. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine who is in law enforcement, has been for many, many years. And there was a time when he was the only one who dared speak up and was trying to educate the other people and I'm not going to give him away in the group that he works with. He tried to educate them, and they ridiculed him. He was the oddball. He was an outcast. He wasn't invited to dinner or to parties or anything. They gave him the worst duty, the worst cars to drive, everything. Now it's different. They're all coming to him saying, gosh, I remember you told me 2-3 years ago this was going to happen, and it's happened. What can I do? Where can I go to learn more? And I find that thrilling.
Yeah. It does make you feel good to know that people care enough that they'll do something about it themselves, that they're willing at least to try and seek out some knowledge. So things around here are pretty,
Do you have a group of like-minded people in your area?
Yeah, we do. There's one official group out in the public, and then there's a lot of cells.
Good.
And a lot of people that understand exactly what's going on, but want to remain in the shadows until it happens.
That's fine, but everyone has to understand that to maintain legality, lawfulness, and legitimacy, there must be a public demonstration of the people's right to keep and bear arms in the form of a militia.
No, absolutely. And I took care of all that. I ran the newspaper ads stating that there'd be the primary drill for the militia, and it was in the paper and all done up publicly, and we went ahead and read through the Code of Iowa and the Constitution of Iowa, and we gave off all the codes and sections and everything there had to do with the militia.
Wonderful. How did it go?
It went very well.
Great.
Very well.
That's wonderful. Well, I applaud you. Anything else?
No. That's I just want to let you know that you may be up there on the mountain by yourself, but you're not quite alone.
Well, I'm not by myself either. If you know what that is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I understand my rights, and I understand how to protect them, and I am completely and totally committed and willing to die for my principles and ideals if it is necessary that I do so, of course not wanting to ever do so. But I find it difficult to understand a nation that would send its children off to die in some God-forsaken part of the world for something that has nothing to do with the Constitution or freedom or anything for the American people, save the pocketbooks of some very wealthy individuals, and then be afraid to stand up or to ask their sons and daughters to stand up in defense of those freedoms and those principles and ideals right here in the country where they need to be doing it. That is a sore spot with me, and I am deeply bothered by that.
Well, it just goes to show you how well public education has made ignorance.
Really?
Yeah. They've really turned everybody into an idiot.
Yeah. Let's pump them cruise missiles into old Saddam. Let's get them suckers, boy. What, militia? To protect our rights? Oh, you must be some terrorist.
Isn't it hypocritical?
It is stupid.
Yeah.
It shows a complete lack of brains. Okay, I want to thank you for calling.
Well, thanks a lot.
520-333-4578 is the number. We have about 16 minutes before the top of the hour, and it's time to hear from you, whoever you may be. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes. This is Al from Westwood.
Hi, Al. How are you?
Pretty good. You asked if we would give up our guns if they came to the house.
Yes.
And I would give up my guns, the ones they know about, so I could, because when they come to the house, there's going to be a lot more of them than me. And I don't want to die doing that. I'd rather give up the ones they know and the ones they don't know about, then I can fight another day.
Okay, I understand that philosophy perfectly. As long as you intend to fight another day, then I have no qualms with it. If you, however, were going to give up your guns and submit to the tyranny, then I would certainly take issue with that.
Yeah, no way. One question I have: when we mail you a letter stating that we have a satellite and we're willing to transmit, roughly how long would it take for the information to get back to us?
We're putting it together right now. We have, I'm telling you, the response to this has just been incredible. We have so many orders for the satellite system that it's taken us a little while to get all the orders together, and we're going to be sending them off in the next couple of days. And I am preparing the mailing for the information for all of the, I can't believe how many people have written for information on the satellite system and the low-power FM transmitters to become an affiliate of this network. It is overwhelming. The response has just been incredible, and it gives me great hope and a tremendous feeling of deep gratitude and indebtedness to all of these people who are going to really make this work. And it is clear to me after the last few days of, you see, the last few days I've done nothing from the time I got up in the morning until late afternoon, nothing but process mail. And so I haven't been able to do anything else, literally. And the response is just unbelievable. It's overwhelming. This network is not only going to work, but it's going to make a tremendous impact. And I hope that those of you who are listening who have not yet decided to become a part of it will reconsider your stance, because what we need is thousands of people across this country blanketing the country with the truth. Because, we have an awful lot of listeners who started out liberal Marxists who really bought into it because that's all they had ever been taught. And after listening to the hour of the time, because it was brought to their attention by somebody who said, listen to these crazy right-wing wackos, you get a big kick out of this, they went and checked out what we talked about, and they have now become solid allies because they realize that this is not about This is not about right-wing versus left-wing. This is about freedom. This is about being Americans. This is about freedom for all people. Male, female, black, white, Native American, Oriental, no matter what your religion is, we don't care. We want everyone to be able to live in freedom with responsibility. And they're just now beginning to understand that they've been on the wrong road, literally walking themselves into slavery. And now they're setting themselves free, and I love it. I just love it. It just tickles me to death. And one of the greatest boosts we ever got was when the White House issued that memo naming me as the most dangerous radio host in America and naming the frequency and all of that stuff that Rush Limbaugh read on the air, and it brought us probably one of the greatest radio audiences in the history of the world.
Well, I stopped listening to Rush because I'm a wacko and a kook compared, to him. I'm a new listener to you, probably just a couple of weeks. I just found you. One other question, kind of personal. How tall are you and how much do you weigh? When I hear you talking about that 375 H&H, I would think that you'd have to be pretty good size to handle that.
Well, I used to be 6'3" tall, but I guess as you get older, you lose some height because now I'm 6'2", and I don't know where that other inch went because I don't feel compressed.
That way when we get older.
Yeah, and I weigh around 250 pounds. I'm a big man.
Yeah, see, I'm 5'8".
Not fat, big.
160, and I'm afraid that thing would probably put me in the ground. But I've got a 0.6 I'm working on.
Well, whatever you're comfortable with that will get you out as far as you could possibly shoot and be accurate is what you need.
Right.
And let's quit playing around with this hunting baloney.
Oh, yeah.
The truth is when they decide to destroy the Constitution and it then becomes our duty to restore the Republic, they are going to send against us troops that are trained to be effective within 200 yards. If we can keep them from getting within 200 yards, we can win this battle.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll win it, one way or another.
I have to believe that we will. I don't think that there's an army on the face of this earth that can occupy and conquer the American people if they maintain their spiritual faith and refuse to give up their weapons. It cannot be done.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that bothers me is the good, well, I wouldn't say the good cops, but the older cops are going to be retiring. Younger cops are coming in, they're brainwashing them. Same with the military.
Well, that's okay.
No.
They're not too smart, are they?
No, that's true.
In a good fight, they wouldn't last very long.
And Spec New, well, that's something else. How you can stand up with the UCMJ and be court-martialed. And fortunately, he hasn't gone to jail, but I'm afraid maybe they didn't do that for a Navy really cause a lot of problems.
Well, they couldn't do it. It would have been political suicide, number one. And number two, they have no basis to justify it because he was right. And where they can get by with doing what they did, they couldn't get by with anything more serious than that.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked about the mailing is because our mail goes to Reno, Nevada, and we seem to lose a lot of mail. Really?
Have you filed complaints with the Post Office Department? Because it is a serious felony to interfere with the mail.
Yeah, but
if you file a complaint, they must investigate it. If they catch the culprit, they must prosecute them.
Yeah.
Interfering with the mail is a serious felony, and they can't get around prosecuting that.
Yeah, that's true if they can catch the person.
Yeah, and if you insist and you raise enough hell, they will have to do something. They'll be forced to do something. And what will happen is they will leave your mail alone.
Okay. One other question. Have you heard of D.V. Kidd?
Yes.
Okay. I get her literature.
Yes, I know D.V. She was running for office in California. She was responsible for Freedom Call 90. We all went to Washington, D.C., and old Tom Ballantyne and his gang of Illuminati adepts tried to take away the protest against the Federal Reserve and turn it into an anti-NAFTA rally.
Oh. Well, she sure got a lot on the ball.
Yeah.
She's a very intelligent lady. I like talking to her.
She is.
So anyway, I'll let somebody else in.
Okay.
Nice talking to you, and I'll look forward to that stuff in the mail.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Bye now.
520-333-4578 is the number. Are you a real American? Do you really care? about your family, about your neighbors, about other real Americans? Or are you stuck in all this other baloney that's going on? Good evening, you're on the air.
Oh, Mr. Cooper, this is Wayne.
Hello, Wayne.
Yes, I would give up my arms. They come around to see me the second day after hell freezes over. That's the day they can get my arms. I'm still here.
Okay, good for you.
Hang in there. Keep up the good work.
I shall. Do you have a group of like-minded people around you?
Yes, indeed.
Good. You get with those people and take care of each other.
We do that.
And don't do anything stupid like some of these other groups have done. It's embarrassing for all of us.
Sure is. Give us a bad name and gives the other side lots of ammunition.
That's right. And we don't need that.
Not at all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for calling. 520-333-4578. Would you give up your arms? Would you fight in defense of freedom, of the Constitution for the United States of America and the Bill of Rights? Are you in a militia? Do you care? Would you march into the New World Order with putting the shackles upon your own feet? We need to know these things. I think everybody out there wants to know. I want to know. We all need to know. The New World Order crowd needs to know. And you need to reinforce what you have committed yourself to. You see, this is just as much a reinforcement of commitment as anything else. For to call this broadcast and make those kinds of statements that these callers have made is a commitment that you're going to find difficult to back down from once you've made it. So there's always a method to my madness, ladies and gentlemen. See, I'll get you to commit to freedom any way I can, over and over and over again if I can, always if I can, forever if I can. You see, it's one thing to, mention in passing to your buddies that they're not going to get my gun, and to make a solid commitment to yourself, to this listening audience, to me, to the nation, to those who would destroy liberty and freedom, who want to bring about their new world order on the ashes of this great nation that has given us so much. It just amazes me that the people who scream the most if their rights are violated are the very ones who want to destroy this country for their new socialist order. That amazes me. I sit and ponder that for hours sometimes and wonder, how can these people do that? If they really had what it was that they're trying to bring about, they would be the ones who would hate it the most. And maybe that's why socialists always, when they come to power, execute those who brought them to power. Do you realize that every time socialism has come to power in the history of the world, they have immediately turned upon those who supported them and brought them to power and executed them and purged them and killed them? In particular, the intelligentsia, the university professors, the journalists, doctors, lawyers, all of the people who made it happen. If you don't believe that, study the history of socialism and communism, which is just another expression of socialism. You see, Lenin, who was the founder of the Soviet Union, ladies and gentlemen, said democracy is indispensable to socialism, from which communism takes hold. Socialism breeds Nazis, breeds despotism, breeds dictatorship, breeds enslavement, breeds the destruction of the human soul, destroys self-worth, destroys opportunity, destroys everything. Creates an artificial entity that becomes more important than those who created it. Something that does not even exist except on paper becomes all that there is for those who do exist to live for. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes, Bill?
Yes.
This is Bill.
Hello, Bill.
The line's already drawn in the sand, has been drawn for some time.
Wonderful.
I took a stand about 20 years ago against these people. By today's standards, it was probably the wrong stand. However, it was a stand. Hopefully it woke some of the present-day patriots up. I've been attacked. These people have taken everything that my family and I have. I used to be a professional. I won't go into what area. But they probably deprived us of, over the last several years, of over $1 million in property.
My gosh.
Like I say, the line is drawn. If the feds show up again, it's at their peril.
Well, that's the way it is at my house. If they ever come to my home to take any member of my family or me or any of my property or the property that belongs to my family or our entities, our trusts, there's going to be the biggest gun battle that you've ever imagined in your life. We will not submit to the tyranny at all.
I understand. And bear in mind, they've been here before. If they come again, it's at their peril, unless they catch me off guard.
Well, you're in the right, whether or not the press acknowledges it or anyone else acknowledges it, we are in the right. They do not have jurisdiction or venue. They're operating outside the law. They are, in fact, outlaws operating under the color of law. They have subverted the Constitution and the Bill of Rights years ago and are in the process of committing insurrection and treason. And whatever we do to resist them is 100% justified constitutionally and within the law.
As Thomas Jefferson put it, Bill, resistance to tyranny is obedience to God.
That is
right, sir. God bless you.
Thank you. And that's a perfect note to end the evening. Good night, folks. And God bless each and every single one of you.
A week before the Battle of Bull Run, Sullivan Ballou, a major in the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers, wrote home to his wife in Smithfield.
July the 14th, 1861, Washington, D.C. Dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. And lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I know more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not falter. I know how American civilization now leans upon the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break. And yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly with all those chains to the battlefield. The memory of all the blissful moments I've enjoyed with you come crowding over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and you that I've enjoyed them for so long. And how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years, when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and see our boys grown up to honorable manhood around us. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I loved you, nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I have sometimes been. But, oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they love, I shall always be with you in the brightest day and the darkest night. Always. Always. And when the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath, or the cool air of your throbbing temple. It shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for me, for we shall meet again.
Sullivan Ballou was killed a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run.
This is the voice of freedom. You have been listening to the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network. We now end our broadcasting day.